Good morning. Very nice to see you all again. Now we're going to do something extremely fun.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
I think I'm having what the Germans call a Schadengasm. Where do they teach you to talk like this? In some Panama City sailor want a hump bar? Or is this getaway day and your last shot of this whiskey? Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's live stream. Hope you don't mind the little bit of fun I had with the intro this morning. I just wanted to mark the occasion. As you probably know from my previous streams, I'm a pretty big Zelda fan. In fact, I'm an original player. I played the original Zelda back in the late 80s when it first came out on the Nintendo Entertainment System. I know that kind of dates me and I probably shouldn't say that, but that's alright. I missed a lot of the games. I didn't actually play most of them in the 90s because I didn't have a console then, but in the mid-2000s I got a Wii and started picking it up again. And my favorite's Breath of the Wild. So today I'm going to be doing some fan art, basically, from Breath of the Wild. Just taking a scene, trying to make it into an exciting action-type illustration. And I find when I do my inkings, I always get better results when I have a goal in mind or a stylistic choice in mind. So I'll often, right before I get to work, I'll study some artists that I like, who I want to emulate, whose work I want to be reflected in my own. Because there's so many ways to approach inking. It says a lot about your personal style. I mean, it's a medium where personal style and choices is like everything. With oil painting, I wouldn't say it's harder to have a personal style. It's not really what I mean by that, but I mean, just the way you pull your strokes with pens and brushes and the choice between pens and brushes that you have are infinite. Says, will make all the difference in the final look of your piece. How you break down values, how you interpret forms, how you turn the form from light into shadow. It's all dependent on your brush strokes. So I want to say hello to everyone here real quick. We got a few people already in the chat. And we got Dorian, Paul, Praveen, Sargon, Miro. Hey guys. Yeah, I got my, of course, my Triforce shirt on. I'm a big Zelda fan. Miro. So what I wanted to do today was talk about a little bit about my materials and my influences, and then get right into the drawing. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes setting it up, and then we'll get right into the drawing on the drawing board here. I'm using across between pens and brushes. I've got nib pens, dip pens. A couple of them are calligraphy pens I'm going to use today that have sort of a thicker line. And then I've got a few sable brushes and cheap brushes. And the last time I did an inking, I think it was just a few weeks ago. Here's some of my Kolinsky sable brushes. I complained about how my Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes didn't really hold a point very well. And I'm like, what's the point of buying all these expensive inking brushes if they're just going to splay out on me? Well, this should have been a no-brainer, but it really, I found out, and I did a little research and just watched videos on people who do their own, to do miniature painting that have a lot of sable brushes and tips on it. It's not only how you treat the brush when you're drawing and using them, it's what you do in between. So you have to condition your brushes. You have to shape them and mold them and store them that way. Otherwise, they won't. They'll just splay out, and you'll ruin them basically. And so you got to take care of them basically. So finally I got this brush soap. I used to have this Master's brush soap for years, and I recently just got a new one because it has a conditioner and a preservative in it, and you swipe the brush in it to clean it off, but then you also kind of twirl it to get that point back, and it stays. It's sort of like hair gel or hair conditioner. In fact, you can actually use hair conditioner if it's not, I don't know, too chemically, I guess. But if it's safe for your hair, it's safe for your brushes, I guess. And so, just hair conditioner that you use for your own hair can be used to shape and mold your brushes, and it'll keep them sort of moist in between uses. And I'm using, Black Martin's, Dr. P.H. Martin's Black Star Matte India ink. There we go. And that's basically it. So I'm going to go back and forth between brushes and pens. Let's take a quick look at some of my inspirations for today. So to do a really energetic action inked illustration, the first person that came to mind is Frank Frazetta, who did almost nothing but that. Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? The software is telling me my microphone isn't working when I go over to the other. Not working?
Yeah.
Oh, it is working. Or it's not?
It's not working.
Oh, okay. Not sure why that is. I have. Okay, I think I figured it out. Just a second, guys. Whoop. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, man. I haven't had any technical problems in a while, so. Testing 1, 2. Oh, okay. All right, can you hear me now? I think it's working. Okay. Yeah, let me know now if you can hear me. It should be. Sorry, it takes about 15-20 seconds for you guys' comments. It's good? Okay. Okay, we got Debbie on the job here helping me with this. Okay. So sorry about that. Let me start over. When I switched over to the input here, my mic wasn't set up because I haven't used this input setup in a while. So what I loved about Frazetta's inkings is the stark contrast and how it's used to draw the viewer's eye to where you want it to look, to the center of interest. or just create cool, graphic, strong shapes that have a lot of visual impact and drama. Like this illustration here of, I think it's from Lord of the Rings, the Ring Wraith fighting Eowyn. No, Eowyn? Yeah. Just pure black. I love that. And there's almost no hatching or cross hatching at all in this. Just there's some, but it's just very graphic and pure. Some other illustrations he did are a combination. He's got some dry brushing here in the vegetation, got some cross hatching, and then some strong dark blacks. Just really good graphic quality to these. Same thing with this guy here. Here's another sort of an action scene. This is going to be sort of thematically similar to what I'm doing today with the hero fighting the monster. And there's like the strong blacks on the shadows here. Frazetta does a lot of figure, like high contrast figures coming in and out of strong shadow and strong lights. It's something when you're working in ink, value is really your only tool. You don't have color, so the values have to be pretty strong. Here's another one, cool cross hatching on this one. A lot of great organic shapes as well, organic use of the pen and brush. Here's another one that's really fascinating. It's not it's not one of his normal pieces. It's very hatch based, just a lot of strokes and cross hatching. And what I love about it though is how he uses the direction of the strokes to just draw your eye up to the main central figure at the top of the pile here. These lines are all sweeping upwards, and it's not something I would think of doing. It's just like, if you see muscles and curvature on the body, you would normally use the ink strokes to curve around the individual forms. Here he's taking the entire picture and the entire composition into account when choosing the direction of the ink strokes. And it creates this vibrant sense of action and movement and just kinetic energy. And it kind of circles around him. He's got his abs here, like with all these curving lines circling around the central core of his being. And then this dark black hair at the very top of this pyramid. And of course, it's a pyramid or a triangular composition, which shows dominance over everything that's beneath it. So it works on a lot of levels here. I'm not so interested in doing something like this today. I'm more interested in like stark, bright contrast and cool cross hatching or hatching marks that you might see in this one. Now Frazetta again is great, but I also am a huge fan of Coll, Joseph Clement Coll, who I've brought up in my streams before. And his pen technique is just more natural and organic, loose, if you will. He leaves a lot of open-ended lines where he doesn't close all the lines off. I think that's pretty cool. That's sort of an impressionistic way of working with pen. But he uses strong contrast too, very dark blacks where he's needed. But then the blacks will have a lot of hatching in them, a lot of reflected light bouncing up into that. And I really, really like that too because it appeals to my painter's sensibility. It's more than just graphic. It's illustrative. It's naturalistic. His use of the pen is great at showing halftones and natural organic forms. His pen just dances across the page. So I'm going to use a combination of sort of these two guys as my as the soul of my artwork today that I want to be inspired by. Now I'm not as disciplined as Frazetta, and I'm not as adept at showing form through hatch marks as Coll, but I'm going to try. That's all I can do. But this is part of my struggle. I'm always working on putting more contrast into my inkings. Yeah, I think I'll be able to do that with these guys in mind. Yeah, Miro, some of the Frazettas remind you of Bernie Wrightson. I'm sure Wrightson was inspired by Frazetta as well. Okay, well, let's go over now to the drawing board, and hopefully I will still have sound. Testing 1, 2. Yeah, okay, looks like I got sound. Okay, so here is my illustration today. So this is actually on a Borden and Riley heavy ink paper, heavy paper made for inking. I can't remember how much weight it is, like 180 pounds or something, maybe 90 pounds. Doesn't really matter. It's just a nice smooth surface. And what I did to create this is I got some screen grabs from the original game and just pictures I found online for the source inspiration. But I basically invented Link's pose here, this flying through the air, chopping with the sword. And then this is just one of the guardians. It's one of the robot bad guys, monsters that you fight in the game. And what I did here is actually I recorded my process showing the drawing from the original rough concept sketch to the final tracing. And let me share that with you here right now. So there we go. So I did all this digitally. My rough concept was really, really rough. And in fact, I changed the pose quite a bit, but the rough concept was just to get the idea down. So now this is the anatomy or figure invention part, where I'm just basically inventing this pose based on some of the reference images I have, but I didn't have that exact pose to draw from, so I just used my imagination. And I just used simple forms to build up the shapes, just simple cylinders and spheres just to create the basic shapes and to get the gesture or the movement of the pose right. And then I started adding the costume details in sort of a rough way, because I knew I would be tracing this onto my final paper after this was done. So once this was done, I printed it out at 11 by 17 inches and then did my tracing on a light box. But I liked drawing digitally here just because I was able to move things around really easily and adapt to the situation and change things on the fly. It's a great way to do concepting and rough sketching, even if you're going to end up doing the real piece on real world materials. You can always do this development process digitally, and it can save you a lot of time and heartache, I think. So I had to also invent the expression. He didn't have any of the photos that I could find didn't really have the right expression of just sort of anger and determination that I wanted to show him wailing down on this beast. So I made his expression a little more angry based and more of a determination just by sort of clenching the mouth shut. I ended up not liking that mouth so much, so I ended up opening it and showing clenched teeth, which I think works a lot better. Moved the legs there because the legs weren't quite in the right position, I don't think. So this has better flow now. Then, of course, I wanted to get details right, like his shield. That's the Hylian shield. That's the best shield in the game. And I wanted to get the graphics on that right, so I had the picture of my reference there. And also during this phase, I'm thinking about how I'm going to ink it a little bit. I mean, these aren't my final cross-hatching lines that I plan to do, but they're close. So I'm just trying to break down this figure into its lights and darks, how I want to have folds in the fabric, where I want lights and shadows to be. I want to indicate that at this stage. Okay, so I got some reference pictures from the game, again, from for the Guardian is what it's called. It's a piece of ancient technology that's about 10,000 years old, and they're controlled by the evil bad guy, Ganon. So these things are like robots, and they have lasers that shoot out their eyes, and they'll kill you in one shot if you don't take them down. Early in the game, they're a really formidable enemy. But yeah, they're kind of cool. Their technology, they look sort of futuristic, but they also look ancient. They did a really good job, I think, designing that. And I'll show you in a minute where they got the design inspiration from. Yeah, so I planned out some of the cross-hatching marks here again, but I knew it wouldn't be my final. But I wanted this, the Guardian, this robot, to be sort of this dark, almost like a silhouetted figure, with some detail showing, of course, but I want it to be the darkest thing in the composition. So I'm going to take some inspiration from that from Frazetta. And just tweaking the design a little bit here, just trying to make it a little more accurate. Initially, the rough sketch was kind of, rough. Okay. And here's sort of the final rough sketch, little shot of that for you so you can appreciate it. And then I printed it out, and here's a quick... This is only about 1 minute long of me actually tracing it on the light table. And I don't know if you're really interested in seeing this part. It might be kind of boring, but it's less than a minute, so it shouldn't be too hard to watch. I used a mechanical pencil just because it's fairly small. Link's really small. I needed to get in there with the eyes and the details. And it made me realize, man, I'm going to have to do some really, really small strokes. So I'm going to get to the inking here today. And tracing the Guardian, too, I didn't trace every single line down that's in the rough sketch because I knew some areas I'm just going to fill in with basically a flat black, so I didn't feel the need to do every line. Overall, the tracing took me about 45 minutes. I think the rough sketch on the computer took me about 2 hours, 15 minutes, something like that. So anyway, there we go. All right, so that was the tracing process, and here we are back to the final image here. Does it look a little dark on the screen, Debbie? Oh, she's not there right now. Let me lighten this up just a bit here. Okay, I'm just lighten up just a little bit. Every time I adjust the camera, it's going to shake a little, so sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to put on my apron because I don't want to ruin my nice Zelda shirt. And I always try to wear old clothes or old pants whenever I do inking because it is one medium that's kind of hard to wash out of your clothes. All right. Jim asks, "Hey, Court, can you tell us about the light table?" Yeah, it's just something I got off Amazon, I guess. It's one of those flat LED panels. I don't know what the brand is, but it's about 12 by 16 or 14 by 18, something like that. And it's really thin. It's great. It's only like half an inch, less than half an inch thick.
Can you actually show how thin it is for everybody?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get out. It's in a crevice here.
Yeah, compared to what the bulkiness of the old light tables, these things are.
Yeah, so here it is. It almost looks like an iPad or something. But yeah, it's really thin. And just tap that on. Ooh, there we go. I can use this as a light box for my streams to light up my face. It's a very cool light. But you can adjust the brightness on it as well. And it's made by Huion. Huion.
Oh, they're the people that make the tablet.
Yeah, they do make the tablets too. So yeah, cool light table. Okay, so I think mistakes that I've made in the past about my with my inkings and not having enough contrast in them is I think the best way to get that dark contrast is to put my blackest black in the composition first, so that I will have gotten it out of the way and I'll see that how black that is. Because other areas that are like in the halftone ranges, I might end up making them too light if I don't do that. It's sort of the same reason I stain my canvases and I get rid of the white of the canvas, because I just want to bring down the overall value of what I'm looking at, so that my halftones will read more accurately in the finished painting and I won't end up doing them too light. So I've got, see, I think it's this brush. It's a calligraphy nib. It has a bit of a flat end on it, and it's good for doing nice fat strokes. I'll probably be doing some brush work too, but what I want to do first is kind of outline the shapes of where I want the blackest black to be here on my Guardian figure. So it's this sort of a pitted, it's a smooth surface, but it has like some pits in it. Like it's like heavy wrought iron or something. So I want to sort of capture that in the in this phase here. So right around where the edges are, where the light meets the shadow, there's going to be some breakup of this edge here. I just think the pen does a little bit better of a job getting sort of a geometric feeling. I wanted sort of like a faceted shape to these edges here, rather than loose organic shapes that the brush might give me. But just for the sake of time, I will be going to the brush to fill in most of the area in the middle here. And if I don't need to cover every single square inch with black ink. If I leave some open spots here and there, I think that's fine. That's a little bit more on the Joseph Clement Coll side of things rather than Frazetta. Frazetta would just put black over this entire shape, but Coll would be a little bit more allowing for the reflected light to come and hit the back side of this shape. So hitting the little imperfections in the surface and bouncing light off of it.
So I guess everyone now knows that you're a big Legend of Zelda fan.
Yep. Don't want to hide it anymore.
He's finally come out of it. So how long have you been playing, Court? I know you kind of mentioned earlier that you didn't get started until later, right?
Oh, well, I told him at the
Yeah.
beginning that actually I started playing the original Zelda back in the late 80s on the NES Entertainment System. The original game came in a gold cartridge, which I found fascinating. I knew that there's something special about this game. I have to play it. I didn't even have my own copy though. I had like a friend who came over and brought his Nintendo, spend the night. We'd stay up all night playing Zelda.
Now, someone asked if I was a fan. Well, Court did buy me a Legend of Zelda game, right?
Yeah, when we first got a Wii way back, well, we got in the late 2000s. We were a little late getting that, but I'm like, you said you wanted an adventure game. I think if you had any kind of games to play,
Yeah.
even though you weren't really into it, I guess. I'm like, oh, Zelda. I remember Zelda from the 80s, and I hadn't really ever played it. I didn't play any of the games in the 90s just because I didn't have a console then. And I thought, yeah, Debbie will like this, but you never played it.
Yeah, I think I did the demo or the training period.
The tutorial level.
Yeah, the tutorial where you kind of learn all the moves and everything, but I don't know, just didn't really hold my interest at the time.
Well, that game is notorious for having a really long and a really dull tutorial section. It's like mandatory and it's like really, really slow and it doesn't really advance the plot at all. Whereas Breath of the Wild, the tutorial level is built into the progression of the game's plot, so it doesn't feel like you're wasting time, and it's very, very natural. You don't even really know you're in a tutorial.
But you played the game,
right? Which one?
The one you bought me.
Yeah, I ended up playing it because I waited around for you to play it, but like you never did. So I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I think it's been about 6 years, 7 years, something.
Oh, I think I got it in like 2009. that game. Yeah, it came out in 2006. And I got it in 2009.
Wow.
The Twilight Princess. Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah.
I do like video games though, but I don't play a lot, but when I do play a game, it's something I've got to really like. So most of my games are pretty old school at this point.
Like Sega?
Yeah, I loved the Dreamcast. And I know there are emulators out there where you can actually still play the games, but I haven't really invested. So my favorite game, though, was called Shenmue, and it was a walkthrough. It originally came out on the Dreamcast, I think, maybe 1999, 2000. And then the second one came out on Xbox. And I played that, but unfortunately the Xbox I had at the time was a first generation, and those were notorious for the hard drives failing. And that's what happened before I finished the game. And now they're working on Shenmue 3. I think it's being backed by Kickstarter, but it's yet to come out. But no, as of now, I am not really a big Zelda fan. It's cute. I like watching Court play, but don't really play myself.
If anyone has any wants to talk Zelda or art, I don't care. Let me know in the comments or in the chat.
Paul says he drew an entire map of the original game back in the early 90s with crayons.
Whoa.
I guess he was 8 then. He had all the treasures and caves, and it took him ages.
Man, that's hardcore.
I think if there was any game I really wanted to try right now, it would probably be Animal Crossing. But I don't want to get hooked into a game because, like anything, you get sucked into it. You don't get many other things done in life.
You can use it as a reward system for getting your work done. Your other work, you can go play a couple hours of your favorite game. But then that turns into like 8 or 9 hours.
Exactly. I don't don't know. It just isn't very relaxing for me either. I know some people relax by playing video games, but I usually find a lot of times that I don't want to say stress me out, but definitely don't relax me.
Breath of the Wild can be very zen-like and relaxing, I think. If you avoid the enemies anyway, but it's like exploring nature.
Yeah, but what if you have to face the enemies?
You can always avoid them. You don't have to. It's a very open world game where there's like so many ways to solve things and go about it. You don't have to fight any enemies if you don't want. Well, at least not in the overworld. So I'm just trying to vary up my strokes here to create some visual interest. I don't want a repeating pattern to form. I don't want it to have a lot of parallel lines. I just want it to look like sort of a rough surface that's smooth but has a lot of texture to it. So I'm keeping my strokes kind of short, but not too short because, if I just do little dabs, it'll be like a stipple inking, and I don't want to do that. I still want to create a sense of motion and movement through the lines. So if I find if I'm going too many lines in the same direction for too long, I'll stop and I'll switch. And having to reload my brush with ink helps with that too. It makes me sort of stop and reassess what I'm doing and ask myself, okay, should I be continuing to go in this same direction or should I mix it up a little bit? I think another thing too that is a pitfall that I want to try to avoid, and I recommend you guys try to avoid, is not going for the outlines of the shapes too soon. I do that all the time. I have that need or that urge to want to fill in or outline all the shapes because that's how I usually draw. I draw the outside shapes first. But I think that can lead you down the path of relying too much on the outlines and not enough on the halftones and the cross-hatching. So if you reserve the outlines till later in the drawing and do more of the work with, on the internal parts of the forms, you're going to have to resolve those with the work that you do with the pen, with the brush on the inside. And that's going to make your drawing more based on values and not so much on outlines. It'll look less cartoony, more, I don't know, realistic, more like these cool illustrations that I'm trying to emulate. Okay, I'm gonna, let's see, maybe do a little bit more inking like down here. I'm not gonna do this whole Guardian. I want to get to Link for sure, but I needed to do some of this dark blackness before I get to that. And but yeah, I just wanted to show you like that's how I want to approach it. And but yeah, there's too much stuff going on here to like really focus on just the Guardian. But whenever I can leave lines open, wherever I can not have, when I don't need to finish a line, I'll try to do that, and just realize that I can use my cross hatching to just build that shape or that tile, and then I can, you don't even really need an outline if you do the internal parts correctly. When the Guardian's heads rise up, you can see these little gears turning inside, and that's what this little area is down here. Definitely helps to be familiar with your subject and what it is you're trying to indicate. That you don't always have that luxury if you're doing a job or an assignment for somebody. You may not understand everything it is you're looking at, but being more experienced with it, like I was with this game, it helps me figure out how to render these shapes because I know what it is I'm trying to show.
So I have a question. Someone's asking.
Yeah.
Oh, Paul was asking, what would be a good place to start and practice?
Meaning what?
I thought I knew, but at first I thought, oh, where do you decide where to start on inking?
Well, I'll explain that a little bit here on this one. My strategy for this was just whatever was going to be my darkest dark, that's where I started today. Because getting that out of the way, getting that dark on the canvas or on the paper, helps me be more bold with my values in other places where it's going to not be so dark. But if I didn't do this first, I might be a little more timid in how I show my darker values, like say on Link's face or on his tunic.
And do you happen to remember the first ink drawing you ever did?
Real true pen and ink. Yeah, I took a class in college. It was one of the drawing classes. It was taught by a theatrical scenic designer and costume designer. And she did a lot of her renderings in pen and ink. So she introduced us to that. And so I did a little study from someone else's ink and watercolor drawing of some kids fishing by a river or something. It was just some old illustration that we found. I don't know where it was from. And I just did a copy of it. And I was like, well, this is really cool because I was using the bouncy nibbed pen and the brush and dipping it in the ink. And I'm like, I didn't know it could be this cool and expressive. So yeah, that would have been my first experience with real pen and inking. Of course, I worked with markers and ballpoint pens and stuff like that as a kid. But yeah, that was my first real delving into the world of fine art inking.
So if somebody wanted to start inking, where would you suggest they start?
Definitely, look at artists you admire. If you don't have some books, get some books, and so you know what it is you want to go for. Because you kind of want to have a goal, and it's sort of like having a teacher. You're teaching yourself, but looking at someone like Coll or Frazetta or Franklin Booth or Bernie Wrightson or even cartoonists like Bill Watterson. You can do simple cartoon ink drawings like that. So have a starting point of a goal you want to reach. And that'll be, do studies of that. How I'd recommend doing that. And don't worry about doing your own original pieces until you have some mileage under your belt. A lot of the books and classes I've taken said, do pages and pages where you're drawing cylinders and spheres and cubes and using cross hatching, and that's good too. It's definitely, you got to get a feeling for the materials and the tools. But if you want to really just jump in and start inking, I would probably go with master study. So I'm switching now to a pen. This is a slightly thick nib pen. I think it's a calligraphy one. I was testing nibs out earlier, and I really like the thickness of this one. You can get some really nice darks, some lines that are close together, but pretty thick too, and they stay fairly consistent. I want the shadow side of this to really, really feel like shadows. And I don't want a lot of light in between my dark lines here.
Up for another question?
Yeah.
Alan's asking, do you have a margin or a number of references for your work? Do you always have more than one reference? Or is there a number where there are too many that stifles the process?
I just use however many I need for the job. And I do try to limit it to sort of my screen real estate. So if I can't fit more than 5 or 6 images of something on the screen, then I think that's probably enough. You don't really need more than you can see on any standard computer screen. So I don't know, 4, 5, 6, of something. But then, I might have 4 or 5 images of just the Guardian that I'm working from. And then when I'm done drawing the Guardian, I'll put those aside, and then I'll have 3 or 4 or 5 images of Link that I'll be working from. So I'll move the other ones aside when I move on to a new area.
And today's Link's 25th birthday, is it?
35th. So yeah, today's
35th.
it came out in Japan on February 21st, 1986 on the Famicom computer system.
Ah, Famicom. The family computer.
Yeah.
So someone asks, Miro asks, have you beaten Breath of the Wild? I want to say, how many times have you beaten Breath of the Wild?
I've beaten it thrice.
Once is never enough.
Yeah, I beat it. No, actually 4 times. I beat it twice, and I went through the game twice when I had it on the Wii U. I borrowed the Wii U from my nephews and niece to play it shortly after it first came out. Then I gave the system back to them, so I didn't have it for a while. And then I started to miss it. So when Age of the Calamity was announced, the sort of the spin-off game for Breath of the Wild, I'm like, okay, I got to play that. So I just went ahead and bought a Switch, and then I got, of course, Breath of the Wild again and played that through. Twice. Oh no, once more. Yeah. So I guess I only beat it 3 times. But this last time I tried to complete as much as I could. I didn't fully 100% the game. Like I didn't find all 900 Koroks. I think I found about 500 so far. But I did get all of the armor that is the base armor in the game, and I upgraded all of it. Oh, except the stall armor. The bone armor, I didn't get that actually, just because I'm like, that's not very useful.
So Jim has a question that I think you and I have discussed before, because I remember being in school, it was a common question. What do you do if you happen to drop a big blob of ink on your drawing? What do you do?
You can wait for it to dry and try to pick it off with a razor or shave it off. And if the paper's thick enough and strong enough, if it's illustration board, you can usually do it pretty well and just ink back over it. You can also, there are things called Pro White, I think it's called. It's basically like whiteout for ink drawings, where you can just sort of just cover it up. I think I have some of that, but I don't think I've ever used it. I mean, I tried it once, and it just, it was still a little bit, you can still kind of see the ink beneath it, so I had to do another coating, and then that seemed to work. So, yeah, those are the two options, basically. Cut it out with razor, dig it out, or cover it up with a white paint of some sort.
Or you could always do what I was told to do in college, which is somehow work it into the drawing.
Yeah, you could just change gears and adapt to it and just roll with it.
But if it's going to be printed, you could always, I guess, paste another sheet of paper over it, or...
Yeah, if you're going to just deliver the artwork digitally and it's more important that the client receive it the way it's supposed to, yeah, you can just digitally edit it out, clean it up. Of course, your original, if you ever sell it, will have that blotch on it. But some people might find that charming. Okay, I'm just going to do a little bit more on this Guardian here, then I'll move over to Link. One of the other dangers you have to worry about too is dragging your hand through wet ink. So that's another thing that actually can be more catastrophic than an ink drop because it might spread over a larger area. So just before you put your hand down anywhere, just make sure it's dry.
Would that be a good reason to kind of work from left to right if you're right-handed, or
Yeah,
vice versa?
yeah, I do that a lot actually, but you don't want that to be the main factor in deciding where to start. Like I was saying earlier, I find it's best to do the darkest dark first, wherever that may be. You can turn the paper, if you want to, like I'm doing here. Just turn it as you work. So these little tubular or rope-like structures, I want to have a sort of a core shadow and reflected light and highlight. And they're basically they are based on the designs of like what rope looks like. It's kind of fascinating. The designers from Breath of the Wild based the ancient technology off of the Jomon period and from prehistoric Japan. And Jomon, I guess, literally means rope pattern. And there's a lot of like clay pots and ceramics that look like exactly like this. In fact, I wanted to show it. I forgot to do it in the intro. Let me switch over here real quick to my workspace. I've got, yeah, here it is. I think it's pretty fascinating to see the origins of what this looks like. So here's like the guardians and the shrines from Breath of the Wild here on the left, and here's the actual Jomon pottery on the right. In the ancient Japanese ceramics, this period was like from about 10,000 BC, which is pretty cool because this ancient technology in Breath of the Wild in the story is from 10,000 years prior to present day. So I think that's probably why they decided to use it. Because you can tell this one almost looks like an upside down guardian right here, but you can see the rope patterns on it. Anyway, so that's pretty fun. Ooh. There we go. Let's zoom in just a little bit here too. I'll try to be mindful if the if I ever start drawing off the screen. Again, doing a pretty strong core shadow here, and it is really helpful to have the black of the turret here be my guide for the rest of the values. So I'm not so afraid now to go really dark with this cross hatching. This rope pattern is actually, it's a light tan color on the in the game. So I want it to read as a lighter value, but it's still, I want it to read like it's in the shadow. Because the light is sort of coming from behind and from the left in this image as I'm imagining it. So there's sort of a dark core shadow running down the middle of the form here. I find it's important to just vary my strokes, make some short, some long, start from one side, then jump over to the other. With something like this, especially, it's technological because it's like a robot, but it's also very organic looking because it's based on these clay pot designs. So you can have a lot more freedom in depicting stuff like this. And I always like the opportunity to do that, where it doesn't have to be perfect, everything's straight, everything perfectly geometrical, and all the lines perfectly evenly spaced, because I guess I don't really have the hand for that. Like with Frank Frazetta's work and Bernie Wrightson, they can be very precise. They're very good at controlling the exact direction, thickness, and tapering of their lines, and it's just so admirable. And I don't know if I'll ever get there. But I don't also know if I don't really want to be there either. I mean, I really like the organic qualities of Joseph Clement Coll's. They really, really speak to me. So I think I want to keep that looseness that Coll has in his artwork. Okay, I'm just going to do sort of the most minimal of outlines here on the side of the head. And maybe even leave it open in places. Break up that line. Just enough to show that there is a contour there, but without going overboard with it. Leave some off the screen here a little bit.
Yeah, your chat window is kind of covering up your inking.
Yeah, just part of it though, right? Yeah. Part that I'm working on is hopefully visible.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just throw a little bit of cross hatching in here now. Not cross hatching, but hatching. I try to make that distinction because I don't like going over my forms more than once. So I don't like crossing over the hatch marks. I just like the initial hatch marks. I feel it sort of disrupts the pattern, or it creates a pattern and becomes disruptive if you go over it with like a 90-degree angle. There's some people who pull it off well. I just don't like that look personally. Okay, cool. So I'm going to now move over to Link, just because I hopefully got the idea for how I'm going to handle the Guardian. And let's reposition here. Reposition the camera. Okay. And I'm going to switch pens too, or maybe even go over to a brush. I'm going to go to I have a number 1 Kolinsky Sable here, or a 0 actually, really small. I'm going to start, I guess, with the hair, maybe in the head, and see how it goes there. But for the ultimate and really thin lines, I've got my Crow Quill as well, my True Crow Quill, which is a very, very fine point nib. It gets a lot of control, but I want to stay with the brush as long as I can to see how that goes. Let's see, I think I better raise that camera a little bit more to focus more. I think it dropped a bit. Okay. And I want to think in terms of values and filling in shapes rather than working within outlines. Only thing with these really tiny brushes, they don't hold ink very long. As soon as you start inking with them, they almost lose all the ink. Also, when I put my pen in the ink on the tray here, I'm also giving it a little bit of a twirl as I wipe off the excess before painting with it, and that helps preserve the shape of the point. If I go with the Crow Quill right now, which is tempting, it's a little bit harder to do curved lines with it. It wants to go straight. If you curve it, you're more likely to splatter it. So this brush is great at getting these really, really small, tiny strokes, but on a more curvy, organic path. Because it's flexible, it'll move with your hand more. I'm going to try not to actual dry brush too much. That can be a cool look, but that's not what I'm going for today. So once I run out of ink, I really have to be disciplined and go back to the ink well and fill it up again. To the ink tray, I should say. I'm not using a well for this. This brush is actually splaying a little bit, giving me a double line, but it actually kind of works here in the hair because it just creates some thin parallel strokes. But again, I want to maintain control and not get into dry brushing too much. So I dip back in the ink. Any comments or questions?
No, pretty quiet.
Okay.
We're all holding our breath, afraid that you're going to get a blob.
There's not really enough ink on the brush to do that. I mean, it's possible, I guess, but I don't think so. Maybe I should zoom in even more here. Okay, that's it right there. That's as far as I can go. Sorry about the camera shake. It should stop in just a minute. I've got it on this long boom arm, so anytime you move it, it continues vibrating for a little while. This thing is so small. I really wish I would have done this a little bigger, but I didn't have any paper bigger than this. I do have some illustration boards. I could have definitely moved up to an illustration board and done this like maybe twice the size. Would have been maybe a more comfortable range. Because the margin of error is just so small here. I've actually got to sort of relax and hold my breath a little bit while I'm pulling certain strokes. Kind of like when you're sniping, you have to, let all your air out so your breath doesn't affect your aim.
Is that a Call of Duty reference?
No, it's from shooting guns.
Oh, okay.
I had a friend who, takes me shooting sometimes. Taught me how to do long range shooting on the range. I'm not in the guns or anything, but it's something different to try.
So how do you choose the direction of strokes when you're hatching?
That's a complicated question. I mean, there's no one right answer, and my answer might change from day to day. Generally, it's the direction that you want to show that the form is moving, or that the direction that the like a contour drawing, you're wrapping shapes around the three-dimensional form to show its contour. So you can go across the short distance, like say a wrap around the short way direction of a cylinder, or go down the long length of it. Those are the basic two ways. But if you do it diagonally, it's going to sort of break up that form. So you have kind of like two choices on a simple shape like a cylinder.
Carlton Bird is asking, have you ever used raised ink?
Raised ink, I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. I know back in the day when I worked in printing, raised ink was something we did for business cards. It was called thermography. But yeah, Carlton, give us more info.
Okay, I'm going to switch to my crow quill now. I think I'm like a little bit more control that gives me.
Alan's asking, when you're drawing with the brush, do you usually support your hand with your little finger?
I rest my entire hand on the board, just rest it completely. Yeah, I don't use just my finger.
And that's for the brush and the pen as well?
Oh, it depends. Yeah, I think so. I just kind of rest the heel of my hand, this left side here, just down on the paper. And hopefully, you got to keep it clean and hopefully you're not running it through any wet ink.
Do you ever wear a glove?
No, not when inking. There we go. Look at those thin, beautiful lines. Thinner than human hair.
Carlton says he's only seen the raised ink done once. So I guess we'll have to research that, find out what it is. So back to Legend of Zelda stuff. Does Link have a last name?
Nope.
It's just Link?
Just Link.
It's L-A-N-K? Or...
Yep.
Was that the original Japanese name?
I guess so, yeah. How it works, though, is his, because of the ancient curse of demise, the soul of the original hero from Skyward Sword is bound to reincarnate whenever the Ganon, evil being, who's the descendant or he's the incarnation of demise, appears to try to take over Hyrule. The soul of the hero is reborn as well into a new body, but he always kind of looks the same. He always looks like an effeminate little, elf boy. Or androgynous. They designed Link to be sort of androgynous, just so he'll appeal, I think, to more boy players and girl players.
So what's a Daruk?
Daruk, he's the champion of the Gorons from Breath of the Wild. He's one of the the race of the Gorons. They're the sort of the rock people.
Oh, he's one of the rock guys?
Yeah, he looks like a giant emoji.
Because Paul London says he did Link in his son's room with acrylics 170 centimeters high, but now he wants a Daruk.
Yeah. Yeah, Daruk's cool. It's fun. Okay. The face is a little rougher than I would have wanted. Just, man, it is small. It's like, not much larger than my thumb.
Ooh, someone says that Link's name refers to the link between the player and the character.
Oh, yeah, that can make sense.
So Jim Sketch Testing is asking, do nibs have a lifespan? Do they wear out?
Yeah, but that being said, I don't think I've ever thrown one out. Like I'm always hoping, like, I guess if I find them in my box, I'll test them, and if they're not good, I'll just kind of throw them back in, thinking, oh, I'll try them again later. But yeah, I probably should throw some out after a while. Depends on the nib, I guess. But yes, if some nibs will just get bent on the end, if they're really delicate, or they'll splay apart. So every time you push down on them, it basically creates two lines, and there's really no coming back from that. You can keep it for that purpose, though, if you want a dual line nib, but it doesn't usually transfer ink very well. It usually runs out really fast. So yeah, they definitely do. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit here.
So Paul's asking, what was your favorite gear or weapon in Breath of the Wild?
Ooh, interesting question. I mean, all the different weapons have so many different functions. Like there's elemental weapons, so you always need to have a fire sword, so you can always start a fire if you need it. Electrical weapons are great if you want to disarm an enemy because you swipe them with an electrical sword and they drop everything. So those are cool. I mean, I guess maybe I should think about what's the most satisfying weapon to wield as far as the effect that it has. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's sort of a hack answer, but I guess the Master Sword is really the best sword. I mean, because it's a one-handed sword, you can still use your shield with it, and then if you upgrade it, you can use it a real long time before it runs out of energy. So I guess the Master Sword probably, which is the sword he's holding right now. I don't know. I mean, as far as non-Master Sword weapons, the Cobble Smasher is really fun to work with. Because you just I don't know, you can whack people with it really hard, and you can break up ore with it. Those are nerdy questions, I know, but that's all right.
So you're done with the game, right? Or are you gonna play?
Yeah, I recently beat Ganon just because I wanted to, because I was just killing time, like doing extra side quests and things for a while, and I'm like, I need to go defeat the final boss at some point here. So I did that last week just because I wanted to put a bow on it and put it away for a while. But there's so much to do in that game. That's why it's so addictive, because you can just like kill time, farm creatures for parts, buy stuff, upgrade armor, look for Koroks. It's just very immersive, and like I said before, it's so open to how you solve things. You don't have to do any of the things in the game if you don't want to. You can literally if you get off the training plateau, you can go defeat the final boss. And there are people who do, the speedrunners, they're amazing. So you don't even have to play the game. Like there's people that can beat it in half an hour. But that's not why I play. I don't want to. The goal of the game, I think, is to play more of the game, not to play less of it. It's kind of like golf. If you think about the game of golf, the object of golf is to play as little golf as possible. If you play less golf than your competitors, you are the better golfer. I think a comedian said that once. And I'm like, yeah, that's so true. I never thought about that.
He's also asking, Paul is asking, did you also play the DLC?
I did this time around. The first time I played it.
What is DLC?
DLC is, the expansion pack. What some people call it, the downloadable content. So after you buy the game, initially, then there's extra missions, basically extra adventures you can have. Yeah, I did that. I got the Master Cycle Zero. I upgraded the sword. The trial of the sword is really hard. At least the first few trials, like the first level, I was like, man, this is hard. So I strategized and ended up. I realized you could actually those trials, when you do them, they strip you of all your gear, all of your weapons, all of your inventory items. However, if you eat a food buff right before you go in, you get to keep that food buff, like an attack buff or defense buff. So I'd eat level 3 defense buff that lasts 30 minutes, and it got me through the hardest initial layers of that DLC challenge before I was able to get better weapons. And if those of you who play the game know what I'm talking about, but those of you that haven't, like Debbie, sorry.
Yeah, like me.
What time is it? You have about 15 minutes left, so keep an eye on the time.
So Miro's asking, are you excited about the sequel?
Oh, yes.
What is the sequel again?
Well, it's just, we doesn't have a name yet. It's just the sequel to Breath of the Wild.
Oh, wait. Is this the thing you keep waiting for them to announce officially?
Yeah, I was hoping. They did a Nintendo Direct this week where they had a big announcement. They haven't done one of those in like a year and a half, and everyone was thinking, oh my God, it's the anniversary of Zelda on Sunday. They've got to announce the sequel. They've got to have more news on it. But nope, no new news. They said, sorry, we have to wait a little longer for more news. They announced the release of Skyward Sword for the Switch, though, the HD version of that, so that's cool. I've never played Skyward Sword, so I guess I'll probably have to buy that and play it.
I love being able to hear the scratching of the pen on the paper.
Yeah.
So I know some people who probably joined us late don't realize how big this drawing is. You're not going to finish this, I don't think.
No, I'm not going to finish it. And I don't want to try, I don't want to try to rush to finish it just because, we have limited time. It's, yeah, I'll zoom out, towards the end here in the next 10 or 15 minutes to show the progress. In fact, I'll zoom out a little bit right now to take in more of the costume here.
I guess you're just planning on keeping this black and white, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like the beauty and starkness of that. You don't want to add color. There's some inked illustrations I've done for clients in the past where I digitally put the inking on like a parchment faded brown sepia background to give it more of an antique look. And I added some muted colors for some of those. And that came out pretty well. But man, I just love when a black and white inking is just done purely with black and white. And yeah, you just can admire the pen strokes and okay.
So since you're not going to finish this, and we kind of talked about that, do you think you're going to record the entire process and post it later?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
If people are interested in that.
Yeah, I have some people asking. And also, Miro is asking, have you played the games for NES and SNES on the Nintendo Switch?
I just played on the NES. I didn't play on the Super, I guess, Nintendo.
What is that?
That's just the generation that came after the original. The NES is the original that came out in the US in 1986 or 87.
We didn't even have Atari, so.
And we had Atari. I had the Atari 2600 was my first gaming console.
And you still have it.
I still have it. It's in the garage.
Get that thing out. Here's a good question from Jim. Do you have any warm-up exercises for inking, or is it best to just dive right in?
Ooh, I think it's definitely good to warm up. I warmed up last night. Well, I did, some inking last night before bed, and this morning a little bit. I did a little bit of practicing and trying out certain nibs. Because it's an unforgiving medium, and if you just jump into a drawing totally cold with no warm up and not even really knowing how your nibs or brushes are performing, that could be bad news. So yeah, I found the nibs I wanted to use, set them aside, got the brushes I wanted to use, practiced some strokes this morning. Yeah, but I didn't do spheres or just simple geometric shapes. There's definitely no harm in that. It's probably really good practice. I just didn't.
So you just tested your materials and made sure they were working properly.
Yeah, made sure the nibs were good, and actually, because I wanted to find thin and thick nibs to do the Guardian and Link, so I got those specifically for that purpose. I pulled those out and set them aside. Like, okay, this is going to be the one I'm going to use for the Guardian. This is the one I'm going to use for Link. Okay, I think for the Hylian Shield, the center part is all dark blue. So what I think I'll do is sort of ink this in reverse. I'm not going to do it here on the stream, but I'll just fill in all the negative space, all this dark shape here, and leave the designs, the little design touches on the surface, leave those as basically just white. So that's going to take a delicate hand, and I don't want to rush through that. But until then, I'll just outline it like so. But it's going to be almost pure black, like this, maybe even totally black. No, I probably shouldn't do any crosshatch whites. I don't want any whites visible in this in the Hylian Shield because the design is so delicate here.
Miro's asking, have you ever done a tutorial on general warm-up inking exercises?
No.
Have you ever considered, or would you consider?
Well, now I am.
Yep, that's how we get some of the ideas. Let us know in the comments or in the chat. I guess this is chat, right?
This is chat, yeah.
And then it turns to comments once the stream is over.
Yep.
So if you think of something after the fact, just leave it in the comments.
Okay, I'm keeping mindful to not drag my hand through the shield because it'll probably still be wet, or some parts might be wet for a few more minutes.
How many different nib sizes are you using today?
This is like the third nib I think I've used. I've got the two sort of calligraphy nibs I used earlier, and then this one, and then two brushes that I've used. I know because I took them out of the jar and set them on the table, so those are the ones I've used. This bracer that he's wearing is on his forearm is a dark brown leather, so it's going to read as nearly black. I didn't think it was super important to have the actual photo reference that, out to look at while I'm doing this, just because all my strokes are already planned out in the pencil sketch. I wouldn't have to refer to anything else. It would only be for you guys' benefit, basically, but This is how I do inkings, basically. Once I've got the drawing in place and all my lines planned out, I don't need to look at the reference anymore. I mean, if it's a subject like maybe a human portrait or something where I might have questions about, where to put lights and darks, yeah, I might still keep the photo reference out in that case. But something like this, where so much of it is invented anyway and fantasy based, I think I don't have to do all that.
So I have a comment question for you. This is from BR273K. Court, this is very artistic and a beautiful way of inking that takes a lot of time. What do you think about comic simple inking with less hatches, more contrast, and solid black areas?
I'm very impressed by all that. I love it. I think it's cool. It takes way more discipline than I have to do less inking to say the same, to get the same information across. But yeah, it's not it doesn't have as much appeal for me personally as something I want to investigate. Like I don't want to do that art just because it's not. I'm just not, I'm not into comic art. I'm more into illustrative fine art inking. And I'm a painter. I love painting. I love rendering. So I want my ink lines to be more a reflection of my painter's sensibilities rather than a comic book style sensibility or a cartooning sensibility. So I just, I just know myself and I know what I like. So that's why I work this way. But yeah, don't take it as the only way to work. It's not the only valid way, to ink. Because yeah, I think in a certain sense, what the comic book artists do is a lot harder because it takes so much precision and delicacy, and you know, here I can like improvise a little bit and be inconsistent in how I show the forms. Whereas if you're doing a comic book from month to month, the style has to be totally consistent, throughout the series. And it's more disciplined and rigid of a way of working, and that doesn't appeal to me so much.
That looks really good.
Yay.
I like how the hatching goes kind of, it kind of goes along the lines of his clothing, I would say. Like that twisting. You kind of have his body twisting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I wanted it to show the movement of the clothing, just that upward tugging of the fabric up against this shoulder where all the tension is focused in that fabric. Here's a bit of trivia. Some of you may know this for Zelda fans, but Robin Williams was a huge Zelda fan and named his daughter Zelda after the game. She actually used him and her in a couple commercials, I believe, too. Nintendo. You can find them online. Okay, just another minute or two here. I don't think I'll actually get to finish the sword here. Do a little bit on it.
So 35 years of Zelda. How many games have there been? Do you know?
I used to know. I mean, like 20 or 30, I think, somewhere in that range. Some of them were for the Game Boy, some were not, part of the official canon, so it's kind of a hard question to answer.
And has there ever been a Legend of Zelda movie?
No. There was a Saturday morning cartoon that was absolutely terrible. It was so funny how bad it was.
When was that? Do you know?
In the 90s sometime, I think. Link had a catchphrase, and it was, "Well, excuse me, princess."
What? Are you kidding?
No, it was really, really, really bad. It wasn't really consistent with what was in the games, and Link was kind of arrogant and kind of a jerk, and yeah, it was. Just check it out.
Now I'm curious. I'll have to find that.
Okay, I think that's about the point at which I'll stop for today. But yes, I'm going to finish this off camera and record it, I think. So I'll post it later on. Maybe I'll do like a time lapse. There we go. Maybe a little lower here. Any last minute questions that I'm not that we didn't get to, or comments?
No, I had a comment. Miro said Princess Zelda was apparently named after Zelda Fitzgerald, who I don't know who that is. Should I know?
F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife, I believe.
Oh,
The writer from
that's
the
the only
20s.
Fitzgerald I know. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I heard that somewhere, I think, but I don't know why Nintendo was inspired by Zelda Fitzgerald.
Do more research. I feel like we need a follow-up stream.
Yeah, really.
With all the Zelda trivia.
All right, so yeah, thanks everybody for watching and joining in and putting up with all the Zelda nonsense if you're not a fan. Debbie, maybe you'll play the game one day. Maybe you'll be inspired. I don't know.
Perhaps.
Anyway, thanks everybody, and I'll see you in a couple weeks for the next live stream. Be sure to like and subscribe. And in the link in the description, I also did another Zelda-based video if you're interested in that. It's where I did a realistic version of Zelda from Breath of the Wild, taking one of the frames or one of the images from the game and trying to make it a realistic painting or illustration. So I'll try to put that at the in an end card too when the video is done processing, but it should be in the link below in the description. And follow me on Instagram at CourtJonesArtist or Debbie at Debbie Does Drawings, and we will see you soon. Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.